So Jaron Ennis defends his IBF welterweight title with a fifth round retirement of David Avanesyan. I'm not sure how much there is to report with this fight. I did a previous recording of this, but it was just too damn long. There really isn't that much to talk about for this fight, in my opinion. It was a fairly predictable and serviceable, acceptable performance by Jaron Ennis. I personally was quite impressed by the fact that he held his nerve so well fighting in front of his hometown fans, because I believe it was the first time in 6 years that he'd fought in front of them. So I think he definitely, that's definitely a plus, because other fighters in the past, they've definitely frozen, they get the yips, they don't perform to their best in front of the hometown fans. But Jaron Ennis didn't really seem all that phased, didn't seem nervous at all. And this really was a display for him, although there were some parts, some moments in the fight which weren't necessarily worrying in the fight itself, but down the line in future could potentially be warning signs and maybe red flags. But if we go into the fight round by round, or at least moment by moment, the first thing I realised going into the first round was how the size difference between these two was just comical. You had Avanesyan look like a small 140 pounder against a big middleweight in Jaron Ennis. That's how it looked. And so, as I say, it's just comical size difference between these two. Bit of a quieter first round, although there was, a fair few punches thrown. Both guys were kind of jockeying for the centre of the ring, looking to implement their own type of fight. Jaron Ennis keeping it long mostly, but not afraid to throw some shots up close. David Avanesyan trying to maraud forward with his gloves up, which we've seen him do so many times in the past. There was a little bit of, not controversy, but a bit of a moment where you just thought, oh dear, this fight could go left. And that was when Avanesyan got hit with a low blow. Wasn't intentional in my book. I think you saw quite clearly how David Avanesyan missed with a right hook, I believe, pulled down Ennis's head just as he was throwing a body shot. Because his head went down, he was pulled over more, and then the punch went low. So David Avanesyan was given the 5 minutes. I didn't have a problem with that. Obviously, it's always a shame because punches like that can be quite debilitating. And so, does it change the course of the fight, you can ask? I don't think so. I feel like this was always going to be a fight that Jaron Ennis was going to win. And I know most people agree with that. It was always just going to be, okay, how does he win? How does he look in winning? And yeah, Avanesyan was given his 5 minutes. I think he took maybe 2.5, because the crowd were booing a fair bit. They're not trying to see a guy stand around for 5 minutes and the fight be paused. And so I think Avanesyan, being a bit of a tough guy, but also feeling the pressure of the crowd, he didn't take the full 5 minutes. So he opted to go in a bit earlier. Not that it would have made a massive difference, I feel, if he'd taken the full 5. But nevertheless, the fight's continued. And it's, for the most part, this was a Jaron Ennis display, almost like a shooting gallery at some point. However, particularly in the second round, there were some moments throughout the entire fight, but I noticed it most notably in the second round, where Jaron Ennis was getting hit, and he was getting hit clean with power punches from David Avanesyan. And it was one point, it was actually quite ironic in the second round, where I believe it was Sean Porter, he was a guest commentator on DAZN. He was waxing lyrical about how good Jaron Ennis's reflexes are, and how he's such a reactive fighter, and reflexes are so great. And while he's saying this, heaping this praise on Jaron Ennis, Ennis is getting hit with like 3 or 4 clean power punches. And now, Ennis was never troubled by any of the punches, I don't feel. But he was taking clean punches, clean power punches. And it makes me wonder what happens if he takes those punches against a guy who's his own size, who's a much bigger puncher than Avanesyan. Because Avanesyan, he's a good, solid European level fighter in my book. He's no boxing mastermind, but he's quite crafty. So it's almost like you'd expect him to have some success. But the only thing is, he's a small guy, and he's not the biggest one-punch knockout artist. He's more of an attritional fighter, a high-volume pressure fighter, who often lands clean, and then takes you out. He drowns you. And so he's probably not the kind of guy who's going to hurt you with like one shot, particularly if you're a level above him. So I guess it shows that, okay, Ennis can take punches from a small European level fighter. But Ennis, many people, including me, see him as potentially the best at welterweight. And so we have to see him in against a higher standard, a higher caliber of opponent. And it makes me question, okay, he was able to take these punches and take them well, but he's still getting his head rocked back by clean power punches from a small guy. What happens if he's in against a Terence Crawford? And now I'm aware Crawford is obviously making excursions into like middleweight, which I find slightly disappointing. I'd much rather see Crawford fight Ennis than Madrimov, but it is what it is. But nevertheless, if we're focusing on Ennis, I personally, the jury's still out for me, because he's got great technical ability, great athletic ability, but he still gets hit quite a bit. For someone who has had so many videos, highlighting his defense, is it really that great? Because when he's in against a crafty guy like Avanesyan was landing plenty of his own shots clean. But credit to Boots for taking them, but it's just a bit worrying in my book. But he was never in trouble. Jaron Ennis was always in full control. And after that, going into the third and the fourth, it really just started to become a shooting gallery, as I say, where we saw that very creative, very accurate offense of Boots, but still the defensive lapses were there. The only thing was David Avanesyan's resistance and his output was waning. You could see that he was really being broken down, because Ennis was just hitting him with everything. I honestly think that after the end of those 5 rounds, Avanesyan had probably been hit by every punch conceivable from both stances. That's how much he was getting hit. That's the kind of punishment he was taking. And he was very brave. He stood up to it. But then you could tell that he was really broken down by the 5th round, when Ennis had his back up against the ropes and David Avanesyan landed a right hook, and he landed it clean as well. But then as soon as it's landed and Ennis's head has been knocked back, he's already thrown his own left hook, and that's spun Avanesyan's head, and Avanesyan's on the canvas, which I can't think of anything more demoralising, where you've just landed a flush punch while your opponent is up against the ropes, and you're the one who ends up getting knocked down. I think by that point, Avanesyan was done. There was really no more he could do. He'd had his success. He'd landed plenty of his own punches throughout the fight, but none of them had a meaningful effect on Jaron Ennis. They landed clean, but they did nothing to deter him. And so I can't argue with the stoppage, to be fair. Realistically, the only thing we didn't get was Avanesyan getting knocked out cold. And I'm sure some of the bloodthirsty fans, some of you guys probably would like to see that. I'm sure Ennis's hometown fans would have. But that's the fight in a nutshell. A good, serviceable, acceptable performance by Ennis. Did what he was supposed to do in the fashion he was supposed to do it. I'm sure many of us expected that's how the fight would unplay. Dare I say, I'm sure there are plenty of people who didn't actually expect Avanesyan to last that long. They were probably expecting a 1 round, 2 round, 3 round job. But Avanesyan's a tough guy. But yeah, Ennis, onwards and upwards. He's had the homecoming, and what's next? I hope he's able to go in there with someone who's like genuinely world class. I don't want this to be a thing where he gets frozen out, or he, for whatever reason, doesn't get the big fights. Because I like Ennis. I think he's got potential, but there are still some questions that I want to see him answer. Like, can he take a punch from a proper, legitimate power puncher? Can he? Does he have the resolve when he's in with someone who can match him for technical ability? You know, questions like that, which I think are going to be really important. And I hope over the course of his career, he answers a lot of those questions. Because right now, he's a champion, but there's still like a prospect vibe that I get, just personally. When I think of Jaron Ennis, yeah, bright talent, very capable, but still has that kind of ambiguity of a prospect, I feel. I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. It's just because I haven't seen him in against someone who I think can challenge him really. But I mean, so far he's done very well. I just want to see more. That's the only thing, and want to see if he can. Does he have the resolve? Does he have the grit when things aren't going his way? Does he have the chin when he's in against the puncher? These kind of things. But nevertheless, onwards and upwards for Jaron Ennis. Let me know what you thought of his performance in the comment section below, and who would you like to see him fight next? Leave it down there and I'll get back to you. For now, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.